Hi friends! Welcome to the Overcomers, a movement and a group of people who have overcome, and they've got a story. That's what the Overcomers is all about. You sharing your story. Why? Because there is power in your story and people need you. They need your voice. They need your story of hope, faith, and inspiration that where they're at right now is not the end. They need to know if you can overcome, so can they. Today, I'm excited to share with you another story of one such overcomer. So let's go check out who it is. Well, I'm honored to be here today with my friends Tony and Debbie Ward. Thank you guys so much for joining us today on the Overcomers.
Thank you for having us, Jen.
Thank you for having us.
So a few things about my friends, Tony and Debbie, in case you don't know them, like I have had the pleasure of getting to know them. They are an amazing couple who have been married for 20 years and are the proud parents of 2 boys. They have overcome a lot in life, from being at a place where they once felt hopeless, trapped, and miserable, having been divorced and remarried and been on the brink again a second time. Now they're at a place where they've seen so much restoration and been amazed by it in their families. They're excited for the future and have a huge heart to help others going through similar things that they did, and they are certified coaches doing that very thing. But what I'm blown away most by with you guys actually is how humble you are. You don't hide what you've been through or how hard that journey has been, but you did what you needed to find help. You desire to change the things you wanted to, and it's now a raw and real story that is inspiring others that they can find change too. So that is why I'm so excited to have you guys on today to share your story with others. Take us on that journey. How did you go from where you once were to where you are now?
Yeah, okay. Where do we begin?
Yeah, right.
um,
Yeah.
well, we actually got married in 1987, so we're actually approaching 33 years right now, or 34 years, give or take a couple there in between. Because you're right, we did get a divorce. So, things, I guess, to kind of summarize real quick, we got married. Everything was kind of fairy tale for a couple of 3 years. Then we, kind of moved to a situation in another town that was not the easy road. A lot of struggles, just normal life struggles. And we kind of both came into the marriage. Our dating relationship was rather rocky anyway, to say the least.
I was engaged
She was engaged
to someone else
to be married, only a few months or weeks away from the altar when she met me. That's a whole nother story in and of itself.
Yeah,
but we did get married, and lived in Dallas for about 2.5 years maybe, and then moved to my hometown, where I basically knew everyone and Debbie knew no one. And so I dropped her off in a place that she was a stranger, went and had my little fun as I thought of it then, left her to raise our 2 sons while I was out living the high life, basically. That went on for 20 years with multiple affair partners, and just a lot of hypocrisy, narcissism, and just pure lack of following God's plan on my part. So fast forward 20 years from that, and Debbie files for divorce. And I didn't fight it a whole lot. I kind of pushed back, but in reality, I just kind of knew I really probably deserved it in the first place. Probably should have gotten it. She probably should have done it a long time before that, truth be told. So we got a divorce. And then kind of about 8 months later, started talking again and communicating more. Our sons, who at the time were about 15 and 20, maybe 15 and 19.
Well,
yeah, they're
one
4
was a
years
ninth
apart.
grader and one was a senior.
Yeah, they called us crazy because we were seeing and talking more
We talked
divorce
more
than we were
divorce
when we were
than-
married.
Yeah, yeah, we did. It was crazy.
Um,
Yeah.
and so we never addressed any of the root causes or anything at that point. It was more of the second
Sleeping.
marriage was basically founded on nothing other than what we knew,
Well,
which was nothing.
When we were divorced, we would things started coming out. Like it's not as if we didn't know what was going on the first 20 years. I didn't know everything that had gone on. I had known a few things. We did a lot of rug sweeping.
Mhm.
We would turn a blind eye, because I was a stay-at-home mom, and I remember just thinking, if I really hold his feet to the fire, and I would have to go back to work. I would have to put my kids in daycare. And at that time, my whole life was to stay home with my kids and to raise them. And so it's not that I mean, honestly, when you do healing from infidelity, you do have to take some ownership in your part of the problem. And that was my ownership of it. It was that it's not that I allowed it. It was just that at that time, I really felt like I didn't have a say in it. Like I didn't know what to do, basically. 20 years ago or 25 years ago, there wasn't the internet. We barely even had cell phones.
We really didn't have cell phones when it all started.
When it all started, there were no cell phones. He had a beeper.
Yeah.
And there was no way to find out, even if he had, I would ask him, but he would lie. And so I had to believe him. I had no way of finding anything out differently. And so there was so much, it was so different than it is today. And there was no help. Like there was nobody that would, I'm sure there were people out there that had experienced it, but there was just nobody that we knew that was going to talk about it. And so it was really hard to find the right help.
Yeah.
And I think that was a lot of it. I feel like if we had found the right help back then, it would have never gone on as far as it did. It was just that we were both just clueless on how to handle the extreme emotions that it brings up. And so we just chose not to deal with them.
Yeah.
Until we got divorced. And then it was a little safer because we weren't married anymore. So it was like, well, we can talk about this stuff now because it doesn't really matter. We're not married anyway. Well, so Trickle Truce would come out. And then we got to a place that we were like, well, maybe we should just get remarried. Okay. So we did. Well, of course,
we had not dealt with any of the issues. We had not dealt
with the core issues.
Mm-mm.
We had dealt with some of the issues. Well, then more came out, and then we got back into the same pattern again. And then it happened again.
Then me not having dealt with any of it and being the narcissist and the hypocrite and the liar that I was in the first marriage, it started manifesting itself again, and it happened again. And so we were basically on the brink of another divorce. About 3 years in. Was it 3 years?
Yeah.
A little less than 3 years, maybe, into the second marriage.
Yeah.
And that's when
the ceiling fell.
Yeah.
The whole house was destructed. A tornado came in, it was torn to the ground.
Yeah.
And it was just like, you know what? This isn't going to happen again. We need help.
We need professional help.
We need professional
And we
help.
hadn't had any professional help.
We didn't know what we needed either.
No.
So,
But at that point, Debbie was like, I'm done. You better find somebody if you want this to work, because I'm done with it. And so I got pretty broken, which I needed more than anything in my life, because I was raised in a Christian home and had professed Christ. When I met Debbie, I was playing the drums in a Christian rock band. And part of my witness to her was one of the reasons that, you know, she came closer to the Lord. And so I felt super hypocritical at that point, and started searching for professional counselors that dealt specifically with infidelity.
and that's the key.
And that's the key.
Specifically
With infidelity.
Yeah.
And we wanted, you know, one thing we did that we would, you know, advise other, and to still advise our clients, is to not go talking to everybody about your stuff, and especially family members and friends. It's better just to, unless you can find professional help, not to talk to really anybody about it, unless you can find the right professional help, because you're going to get a lot of bad advice. You're going to get biased advice, and it's people that have not been through this don't know what it's like.
Know what it's like.
They just don't know.
Yeah.
So we sought out to find people and couples basically that had been through this
And stayed married.
and
That
stayed
was the
married
difference.
and recovered and
Yeah.
went to the other side of it.
Mhm.
So I went through about 3 counselors that actually, they actually, 2 of them turned us away before we ever had our first meeting. And the third guy, after about 3 meetings, said, y'all are too much. I can't deal with y'all.
It was bad.
It was bad.
Oh.
A storm walked in there.
Oh, man. Yeah, we were
a
a
storm.
bad situation.
Our clients look at us now and they're like, did y'all ever struggle? And we're like, oh, y'all have no idea. You look at us
no
now and you would
idea.
think, oh, that was a breeze. Oh, no.
No.
It was bad.
But we finally
Yeah.
I finally found this one guy, and we loved him. Bless his heart. He has passed away now, and he was fantastic, and basically just was like, I've been through this myself, and I can help you guys. I'm sorry, I'm playing with my glasses. I can help you guys. And he was fantastic. And he basically didn't take sides. He was very straightforward with us. He held both of our feet to the fire, and
He was amazing.
he walked us through the healing process. And so we were with him for well over 1.5 years on a weekly basis. I mean, we were
Sometimes twice a week.
sometimes twice a week, sometimes individually, sometimes as a couple. I mean, we saw him a lot, and
We were desperate for healing.
we were. And Debbie had found this couple online that she had been wanting to go to, that specifically coached in infidelity.
It was like
all
an
about
intensive weekend. So it's like a 3-day weekend.
Mhm.
And the only people there were people that had had an affair. So you knew when you walked in, and there were only like 20 couples.
Mhm.
So you knew when you walked in, well, they're here for the same reasons.
Right.
So it immediately almost gave you some comfort to think, okay, well, we're not alone.
We're not the only ones out there.
We're not the only ones that have been through this. Because at the time you really do, you isolate yourself and you think,
really do.
gosh, you see all these happy couples and you're just like, why is our life so hard? But in reality, there's a lot of people that, are struggling too.
There's a lot of great marriages.
Talk about it.
There's a lot of marriages that look great on the outside and they're still married, but they're miserable. So, but if you look at the church and you look at the secular community, it's 50% of the couples divorce. I mean, the divorce rate is super high now.
Yeah.
And, most of that is not due to, you know, the husband banging his toothbrush on the side of the sink in the wrong way and his wife not liking it. That's not really the reason people get divorces. So Debbie had found this couple that that had an intensive weekend, and it was very expensive, like very, very expensive, especially for us at that time. And we put it off, but we put it off for a while, and finally we pulled the trigger and paid the money and went to this conference in Dallas, thinking, okay, well, we're not gonna know anybody there. So we get sat down in our conference the first night, and we're sitting around the table, and lo and behold, another couple from our hometown comes walking in the door. We're like, oh my gosh, they were in our Sunday school class.
Yeah, we're like, oh my gosh, hey, we know them.
We know them.
But you know what? They became some of our
They're some of our dearest strong
points. It's like
points
God
now.
knew
Yeah.
that we needed them, and they needed us.
Yeah.
So the four of us became good friends when we got back from the conference, and
we kind of helped each other. Yeah, we were a support system for each
and
other.
It was crazy. But then, you know, because we looked at each other and we're like, well, they're obviously here for the same reason we are. So
Yeah.
what can we say, you know? They're still married.
Yeah.
And they're
doing
happily
great.
married.
Yeah.
And so
she had actually already filed for divorce, and that was his last ditch effort to keep them together.
Yeah.
She already had the papers and everything, and
crazy.
But yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, that weekend when we were there and went through that training and coaching with this couple, basically we looked at each other and went, wow, Dr. Miller knew exactly what he was talking about. Everything they're talking about is just what we had learned from our counselor for a year and a half. Wow. And so at that point, we knew we were on the right track. And so from that point forward, that was about 10 years ago, maybe
2013.
Okay, 9 years ago then was that conference. And since then, we've been on our own journey to do healing and to heal ourselves. And you know,
and it took several years.
Oh, it did. It didn't happen. It wasn't like we came home from the conference and everything was hunky-dory and we just sat.
That's where the real work began.
That's
like,
when
now you got to put it
started
into practice, you know,
right, what
you learn. And,
so there was several years of really intense, hardcore conversations, hardcore arguments, some times of intense love and, you know, passion. And I mean, it was a roller coaster ride. And so, but we, you know, at that point, I mean, we made the decision and I had gotten so broken that I was literally on my face on the floor wailing, just uncontrollably wailing as the demons were coming out of me, just uncontrollable. And so I made up my mind right then that I got to do this and I'm going to do it regardless for me, which Debbie thought was kind of selfish at the time, but I really did need to do it for me. I needed to change for me because I hated the person that I saw in the mirror. I did not want to be that guy. And so I proceeded then to fix myself, of course, with the help and the grace of God.
Absolutely.
That's the only way I did it. But, and we encourage couples now, you know, work on yourself. Don't try to, you know, don't try to analyze your partner's problems and figure out what they need to do. Fix yourself and the rest will follow usually.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And
everything else takes care of itself.
Yeah.
Generally.
So, yeah, generally. So
at this training was really a pivotal time for you guys in where you are now. Was there a moment or something that was said where you really realized, hey, for us to go down this different track, we have to go deeper and deal with ourselves? Like, what was it about that weekend that really caused that change to happen?
Probably learning about boundary lines and how, you know, you don't even realize you've moved your boundary line until you look back and it's like way back there. I think people, and one of the things that stuck out to me the most was the ones who believe like really believe like they'll never do this, they're not capable of doing this, are really the most vulnerable because they don't have boundary lines up at all. And so therefore, that's why like people that have affairs don't generally wake up and go, oh, I think I'm going to go have an affair today. It's a subtle thing. And it's like you have no boundary wall up. And so you just have conversations you shouldn't be having. And you do things that you think are innocent. And then it's like all of the sudden you find yourself in a
Very compromised
situation and you make a choice that changes your life forever.
And that's just what it is. It's a choice.
Because you didn't have your proper boundaries up. So when we coach a lot about boundaries and how they are there really to protect you. And it's not a form of control by your spouse or, it's really to help you have freedom.
Right.
So that you don't get yourself in those compromised situations.
Yeah.
So good. So
that stuck out to me the most. I don't know.
Well, and I think for me, one of the pivotal points of that particular weekend, I mean, everything we had learned with our counselor up to that point was, I mean, spot on and huge in our recovery. So I don't want to take anything away from him, but I think one thing that I did learn I think it was more driven home to me than anything was the empathy part of putting myself in her shoes and really looking at what I had put her through and what Debbie had gone through all of this and was a strong enough woman to stick with me, which she should not have done, but she did. And it breaks my heart even today. But yeah, that was huge. And so, at that point, when we started doing our recovery and doing the work that was required after all of that counseling and the intensive weekend and everything, it kind of became it became a way of life. And I had already made my decision that there was no plan B, period. This was it or nothing. And so we started working on just healing and restoring our marriage and our family. And that took a while to bring back the trust from my kids. I mean, that didn't happen overnight either. And
we both had to earn trust.
We both had to earn our trust back. Trust is not given, trust is earned. And
it says it's like trust is lost in bucketfuls and replaced in drips. Something like that. It's like it takes a long time to regain.
You lose trust. It like that, but it takes a long time to get it back.
It does.
Yeah. So,
what's so amazing about hearing your guys' journey, and thank you for being so vulnerable. Like you got the amount of courage you guys have is something you just don't see. You just don't see people being this courageous. This is real courage. And it's so amazing to me, listening to your guys' story and hearing, here you guys were in this place where you're in a church body where there's such a huge need and a gaping hole of a need, to the point that fellow members in the church body are struggling with the same thing, yet you guys don't know it, and that need is not being met. So I think it's so amazing that here you are now in a place, in a season where you guys have so much to give, so much wisdom from that journey. You've learned those hard lessons, and now you want to help other people. You want to be those people who are sitting there in that church family, able to help.
Right.
Able to help. You're able to help those people in the way that help wasn't there for you. And I just think that is absolutely beautiful. So,
and on that note, our pastor and the pastoral staff are out actually sending people to us now. They're turning it back around and saying, you need to call Tony and Debbie.
So good.
Yeah, it's like complete turnaround. So it's really cool.
So good. I want to ask you guys a few pointed questions here as we get closer to a close. One, I know there's a lot of people who probably will be listening to this interview in the future, and they're going to be able to relate to a lot of what you guys shared. And maybe there's somebody listening who actually is facing that right now. Maybe they're in their marriage and they're dealing with infidelity. Maybe they're on the brink of divorce. What one piece of advice would you tell them today?
That coaching or counseling is a whole lot cheaper than divorce. Don't get a divorce
You don't
yet.
have to get divorced over
No, you don't have to get divorced over it. And there is hope if you find the right people. And if both parties are willing and wanting to try to make it work, but just don't know how, which is where we were, it's repairable, it's restorable. So that would be our first advice. Don't get a divorce. Seek help.
Most people don't get divorced over the infidelity or the act of infidelity. They get divorced over what happens after it's found out, by either the continuation of the lies and the deceit, or the defensiveness, or the lack of ability to handle the extreme emotions that you go through, because it's
very emotional,
devastating.
Yeah.
But with the right help, you really can get on the other side. You really can.
So good. Well, I know that there's going to be people reaching out to you guys for help. So I'm going to make sure to drop that website link below, so that if you are in that place where you need help and you need that person to talk to, please reach out to Tony and Debbie. Thank you for your heart for not only people like you that have faced those horrible seasons of life, but for those who are in a desperate place of life too.
Well, everything we do, we have to say that without our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, none of it would be possible. And we give all the glory to him.
So good. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the Overcomers with us today. Thank you for, again, your courage to share your journey and to share the painful moments of your journey with us and anybody who listens to this interview. I know that it is going to be a huge encouragement, especially in the area of just not feeling alone. Feeling alone with what people are facing, with what you are facing. You guys are an amazing couple, and I just admire your journey. I admire the fact that you guys are so teachable, you're so hungry, and you're so humble. You're willing to talk about the tough stuff, and because of it, you're helping people who really need it. So
thank you, Jen.
Thank you for having us on here.
We are honored to be on your show.
Very honored.
Wow, wasn't that powerful? Do you have an overcomer story? Do you know someone who needs to hear this message? Please share this video on your social platforms and tag us so we know who you are. Stay tuned as we share more overcomer stories in the weeks ahead. We're looking for you. We're looking for the overcomers. Join us. Let's come together as the overcomers. Start sharing your story. We have multiple ways you can start getting involved and repping the movement, repping your story of what he has done in your life. And last but not least, if you want to learn how to overcome, visit www.dannyjohnson.com. That's my coach, and that's where I learned how to overcome. Thank you so much for joining with us today. We believe in you, and we believe in the power of story. We believe in your story.